Sounds good. And so there's obviously a lot of things we could talk about. Maybe we could start with something general, like basically why did you go into politics? Because I've heard that you're kind of recent in this sort of business, so to say. And what were your motivations to jump into the elections?
I was a family doctor for 40 years, and then I've been working part-time in the operating room since COVID, doing emergency surgeries, and really enjoying it, and doing art. And so, although there were other family problems, I had a comfortable life. But I was so impressed by the way the Premier was handling COVID, since I knew something about that as a medical doctor, and lay people can look around the world and see what's happened and say, well, why are we the best? And so it wasn't easy. He listened to the science of Dr. Jennifer Russell, with all the pressures from business, etc., not to close the schools, not to close businesses, etc. A lot of other politicians did not listen to that. I had some idea how hard that was. I know from my health colleagues in the hospital, we were very impressed by the way he was handling things. And probably we complain about politicians at least as much as everybody else, maybe more, in the healthcare system, because we're constantly looking for more resources. So that was the key reason. I'm the same age as the Premier. That was the biggest draw for me coming into Fredericton South. Does not have a PC member. I obviously think there's going to be a PC government, and I'm hoping that Fredericton can have a strong voice in that. I'm hoping I'm that strong voice.
Were you a member of the Conservatives before the election?
No, I joined the Conservative Party about 2.5 weeks ago, when I decided
to go into the election.
Yeah, I'd never been with any.
Were you a member of another department?
No.
Did you vote for the Conservatives?
My family, I'm from a farming family in Prince Edward Island, a dairy farming family, and they're very liberal.
Okay.
Yeah, but this goes back a generation, but probably my brothers too. But I would much more be putting my hand over the different titles and saying, who's the leader? What are they doing? What are they standing for? And it might not be quite that simple, but that certainly was like a lot of the platform that he has now, I didn't know it when I came in, but I'm very impressed by it. I was impressed by the Premier before, being a layperson and not an economist, but he had very quickly turned a pretty bad financial situation into a somewhat better one. We had a surplus. We increased our credit rating, so other people agree that we're in a better situation, and then COVID hit. And so a lot of the things he's doing now, like, for example, healthcare, he's continuing the same increase. I think something like 3.9%.
You're talking budget-wise?
Yes, in the healthcare, which is such an enormous budget. And it's his number one concern for this election. He's identified it 3 or 4 times to the media when I've been with him. It's the number one issue for the constituents in Fredericton. And it's the number one concern for me, and it's something I know best.
What do you mean, the balance of the budget?
No, I mean healthcare.
Healthcare is okay.
Healthcare,
not COVID related, but healthcare in general.
Healthcare in general.
Okay.
It all comes back, and that would include mental health, drug addiction, in the same ecosystem as homelessness and housing. So I'm glad to see that the first plank in his platform was about mental health. I have an extremely mentally ill family member.
Oh, really?
Who is homeless.
At the moment?
At the moment.
In Fredericton?
I can't comment.
Okay.
But it's a nightmare. And it's been a nightmare for 8 years. And so I feel that personally. I've always been involved in those areas as much as I could be, as far as my... When I was a family doctor, it was very difficult to be involved in any of those things practically because I was so busy. But now I'm older, but that's not an excuse not to do anything. So I thought I could very probably contribute more than I was contributing by doing this.
Can I ask you, you're always free to not answer questions if you don't want to, right?
Thank you.
I'd be curious to know what your salary was as a doctor when you ended your career, like maybe 5,000, 10,000, close, not exact salary, but
I would rather not give you that, but you can easily, I think it's public record, and you can look up an average salary for a family doctor. I can't actually quote the number, but you can look it up, I think. Well, for what does a family doctor?
But you were a surgeon?
No, I was a family doctor.
So you were a generalist.
Yeah, and so I saw that model evolve. I worked in the emergency room, delivered babies, took care of my patients in the hospital, which some doctors in this town still do, but the model is changing because there aren't enough doctors. I was one of a small percentage of family doctors who continued to work in the operating room periodically. Let's say you need your hip replaced, well, I would go in and help with that.
Okay.
So now, when I gave my practice to a young doctor, I think I might have been the last one in Fredericton able to find somebody to take over a large practice. And since then, I've been helping with emergency surgery, assisting. All surgeons need an assistant, a doctor who's an assistant.
So you're not a surgeon, but you assisted doctors
that's right.
that are.
Yep, that's right.
So
I do a lot of C-sections, a lot of broken bones, a lot of belly problems, general surgery.
So you don't want to state what your salary was?
No, I don't know it, to tell you the truth. I don't know what it is.
20 grand, like close to plus ou moins 20 grand?
I'm sorry, I really can't. Money has never been a driver for me. And I've continued to work, but wouldn't be nearly the salary. But also a family doctor has significant expenses. Like it's a small business. My expenses would have been something, and I don't mind saying, and we had a relatively small, inexpensive clinic over on the north side. My expenses would have probably been something like $300 to $500 a day.
But it depends what you're earning, obviously.
Exactly.
Here, I suppose you're paid for
So the family doctor, you have to see a certain number of patients just to cover your expenses.
Yeah.
Because we were working in the emergency room, we could see some obvious deficiencies. My partner and I started and ran the Fredericton After-Hour Clinic for 25 years over on the north side.
Which was
It was a true after-hour clinic. We employed doctors for the evening and weekends, and it was busy all the time, right from day one. Because things that were acute but not emergencies, like an earache, or we sutured up a lot of people, et cetera, et cetera. We had a really good relationship with the emergency room because we worked in the hospital. So, yeah.
I have a question also for you related to
something I brought to you. Like I'm gonna describe it because there's no video here, right? But what is your professional opinion on such an assemblage of candies and chocolate bars for dessert? Would you consider that healthy?
You'll have to give me a little more context.
Well, I mean,
I'm looking at a bunch of
like somebody comes and says, "This is what I eat for dessert."
Yes.
What's your opinion as a doctor?
That's just carbohydrates, that's just sugar, simple sugars, which mean to a layperson that they're used by your body very quickly and have very little value as far as running your body. So I guess it begs the question of, should you eat dessert?
Well, I mean,
of any kind, because most desserts are simple sugars.
Mm-hmm.
These are really fast-moving ones. These ones, they're like a complex sugar would be something like rice, potatoes, pasta, and that stays with you as energy. And you should eat some in the morning, kind of thing.
Do you happen to know if the homeless shelter here is funded by the government somewhat? The one right here? It must be some subsidy from
shelter. You mean the shelter or the community kitchen?
Well, actually, probably the where they serve food here. It's not the shelter actually.
And I've worked there.
Yeah. Is that funded by the government partially?
I don't know. Most of the food is donated.
But my question is, did they receive like a subsidy of some sort?
I don't know the answer.
You don't know. I'll go ask them.
I should, because I've worked there. a number of times.
But it's okay, I'm just, maybe, I was figuring you might, but I could go ask them themselves.
Yeah, I can guess. I guess that there is some provincial and some city subsidy, but I'm not sure about that.
So what we have here, I'm just gonna describe it, we have 2 bars of chocolate and basically, in French, des jujubes, I don't know how to say it in English, and like marshmallows and stuff. So the reason why I brought this is because this is what they're serving there for dessert to the people in the street. And I'd like to have your comment upon that. Or basically, as a doctor, or just as a citizen, or as a taxpayer that's giving the government that might be funding this, I'm gonna double check that. But I'd like to know, like, can you do something for that? Because
I know, because there's quite a bit of data we don't know. I don't know whether the government's funding that. And I know what the meals were when I was there working.
How were they?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yes.
But this doesn't seem like super.
But have you seen the meals?
A few of them.
Well,
But I mean, not every day.
I was always impressed with the meals.
Health-wise.
Health-wise.
Okay.
Absolutely. You know, they included all the basic things. I don't remember seeing anything like this. I do remember seeing, I can rhyme off a few of the desserts. Often it was fruit or jello.
What about the food in hospitals?
So I'm not sure.
Well, this comes from the shelter like 2 days ago. I picked it up, but I'm just
The
like.
shelter or the community kitchen?
The kitchen, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I see.
the people from the shelter eat there.
These shelters also serve some food at the end of the cold shelter. I know because I served it.
Yeah.
And it's maybe what you and me eat for breakfast. All the cereals, porridge, toast,
So it's okay.
peanut butter, milk, juice. That's what I can remember. It was basically a snack because they're not a community kitchen.
I kind of personally, like, I have an issue with public institutions that don't serve food that I consider like quality, you know, especially in hospitals. Like, you should have quality food for patients.
Yeah.
Even if it requires paying a bit more to get organic or to get local.
Yeah.
You know, I think it would be worthwhile. And it would help everybody in the room.
Well, I've eaten at this hospital since the late 70s.
Because you at work, right?
Because of work.
How's the
So I
food?
eat
Not
the
too
same. I eat the same food as a patient would.
Yeah.
Of knowing that an awful lot of the patients are given special diets by the dietitians because of their illness, of course. So this is the best hospital food I've ever eaten.
So
The ones in
often they're not
Halifax,
too bad,
they do have local businesses that bring in sandwiches and things that are made that day. They have desserts, you know, they have sweet desserts, they have jellos, etc. But the actual food, you know, the main courses of breakfast, lunch, supper, and that's controlled by the dietitians too.
What do you think
I'm sure
about-
there's a budget.
Yeah. What do you think about pharmacies that sell junk food?
That sell what?
Junk food. They sell medicine on one side,
Yeah.
and then they sell tons of junk food on the other
Yeah,
side.
that'll be the next. If you stop them from doing it, then it's going to be a question of how come they can't do it, but grocery stores can. Grocery stores are selling it. You walk into a big grocery store, especially the big grocery stores. You walk into one of the big grocery stores and you're surrounded by carts. When I walk into a small grocery store down on King Street,
Victory.
it's a lot better. There's also some garbagey food, but you're just enticed by that. So the companies have a lot to do with what's going on as far as that's concerned. So as far as going back to your pharmacy question, I think it would be, I think they could argue, why can't I sell this to grocery
You
stores?
can have a more general approach, but I suppose we'd have to think about it a bit more.
I'm older, so I remember fighting for the pharmacies not to sell cigarettes. No, that was a really big deal. That was a really big thing. Because they're saying, well, we're losing revenue, therefore we have to increase our prices for everything else, and maybe your pills. But eventually I said, I think you're right. I agree with you. You should still stop selling them. You know, I'm giving you prescriptions for my patient, and I'm telling Jacob to throw away cigarettes.
Yeah.
But he can sit by them where he picks up his pills. So eventually, times changed, and the pharmacies here got rid of cigarettes before everybody else did, like the bars and the grocery stores, etc. So, but it's a good point about sugar. You know, sugar and salt.
But like here, what's the issue is basically like a public policy issue. If there's government money going to them, I don't know if that's often the case that they serve stuff like this, but they maybe should be like, you know, some sort of rules or at least education, you know, to tell the people preparing,
Yeah, but-
like we can buy an apple that's not going to cost more than this. And it's gonna be
Fortunately,
healthy.
I've worked in those places, they do have apples. They have apples and fruits, and at the end of the coal shelter, apples and fruits. But at the community kitchens, apples and fruits. So I never saw anything like
Yeah,
that.
maybe it's an exception. I don't know.
I don't, unfortunately, you're talking to somebody who likes candy, unfortunately.
Oh, you do?
I could live on salads and candy.
Oh, really?
I've lost about 5 pounds during.
Do you eat good candy at least? Because there's good candy. There's like, you
No,
know,
I
you should try, like,
my
maple
partner's
syrup.
from France, and she likes really good chocolate, but unfortunately, the cheaper the candy, the better I like it.
Oh my God.
Like, you know, caramels.
Yeah, but like maple syrup is super sweet, but it's at least not
Yes,
as bad or honey or
I do like maple syrup too.
Okay, I kind of will maybe like jump from a few different questions here. I'd like you, because we've been talking like health and stuff, I'd like you to give me, in your opinion, what is the greatest quality of Miss Pico?
I can't comment on that. I don't know Miss Pico enough to answer that question.
Okay.
I've only read her bio and.
You don't know her
met
personally
every day.
enough?
Oh, no, I don't know her personally.
What about
I have
Mr.
no reason to think that she's nothing but an honest broker, but I don't know her. She looked like she had an impressive career with the government, and but beyond that, I really can't comment.
What about Mr.
But I'm not kidding. She
Yeah.
seems like a very nice.
What would be, in your opinion, the greatest quality of Mr. Kuhn?
I don't know Mr. Kuhn personally. I've met him a few times. We've said hello on the street here 2 or 3 times since the campaign. I think one of his qualities, I wouldn't say it's the greatest quality because I don't know him personally, is he continues to try to be involved in the community.
Interesting.
Generally.
Interesting. Budget-wise, before that, actually, there's another question. The name of your party is Progressive Conservative, right? I'd like to know where, basically, on what side of those 2 words you are, if you understand my question. Are you going to be like more of a progressive within the Conservatives, or more on the conservative side of the Conservatives?
Well,
from an economic point of view.
I'll try to try out my new hat as a politician and not answer your question exactly how you're answering it. I told you why I joined the party.
Yeah.
And I think we're much better in Canada at not pointing to people and say, you are this, therefore you have all these qualities of this party. We're complex people, and I think I'm extremely liberal in many ways, a small L, and I'm conservative in some other ways. So
Are we talking economically?
I'm talking in every way.
Okay, because there's morally and economically. I'm talking more economically.
And I guess you could argue morally. I don't know if even you could answer a question morally, conservatively, or liberally. But I try really hard not to stereotype. Let's say you come in and say you're going to vote liberal. I'm going to try really hard not to stereotype you as a bad person or whatever. You might have one particular issue that you like about the Liberal Party, etc. And there were things I really liked about Blaine Higgs and his handling of things. And I have no problem with
Policy-wise.
Policy-wise, I have no problem with. Personally, I've gotten to know him, and I like him very much. That's probably neither here nor there. Let's say I didn't like him.
What would you do if you were the premier, or if you ruled New Brunswick? Like if you couldn't craft the policy you wanted, basically, what would your policy be towards the Irving family or the Irving businesses?
I don't think I can give you that's hypothetical, and I don't think I can give you a good answer. I've spoken to the environment minister a couple of times about things, and I didn't realize how good environmentally our government was doing relative to what's been done in the past.
You're meaning relative to New Brunswick itself?
Relative to what's been done in the past by other parties.
Okay. Yeah, it says.
I noticed a report in the last 2 weeks that the news media's kind of just brushed aside while they talked about the turkey hunt and the 70 new lakes that you can go white fishing on, that he's increasing the land by the end of 2020 from 4% of protected land to 10%. And that's not garbagey land, which would still be unbelievable. He partnered with every wildlife and nature conservator you can think of, and the indigenous people, and it's going to go from 4% to 10%. It'll be protected forever. And the minister was actually given a Legislature of the Year award by the Canadian Wildlife Federation within the last month. He didn't tell me.
This was the conservative minister of the environment. Okay.
Yeah.
You're sort of a man of science, I suppose, like as a doctor and
Yes.
itself, you're a man of science. I'd like you to give me a number from 0% to 100% on what you expect, like what are your chances to get elected in your riding? How you evaluate those chances? Obviously, it's an estimate; it's not an exact number. But like, how do you evaluate their chances of getting elected?
My chances?
Uh-huh.
I have no idea. Let me expand. I was on some kind of a conference call, which we have almost every day, etc. And somebody asked about polling, internal polling in various polls, and I said, I don't want to know any results for my riding. If I probably don't have a thick enough skin. Let's say you're telling me, Dr. McKinnon, you're losing pretty badly. Maybe I'll slack off. Or you're winning. You're ahead now. I might slack off. I am going for every vote till I have to stop. And I am in this to win. You know Canadian politics as well as I do. Can I lose? Absolutely. But I'm not trying to run second or to run a good campaign. I strongly believe I could be a strong voice in the government for downtown Fredericton. Given the choices that we have. You know, politicians are not perfect. I'm sure Canadians have noticed that.
Human beings are perfect.
Exactly.
What can you bring to this riding that Mr. Kroon can't or isn't?
Well, number one, I've got the leader and the party that I believe in. I'm a family doctor. I am who I am. So I have a wide-ranging experience in healthcare. I happen to have been an artist my whole professional life. You've seen my artwork out here. And these are the ones, I deliberately moved to Fredericton. I grew up on a farm, and I deliberately moved to Fredericton because I loved it. And I've been here for basically my whole adult life, after practicing in the country and going out of the country for a couple of years practicing. So I think that, and in partnership with being on the government team, can be, and a lot of the issues that I'm interested in associated with healthcare, like homelessness and housing and mental health, I think I can contribute to that.
I'd like to ask you a question about housing. What's your, what will you do for housing? Or what,
there's already a housing platform.
Policy. What is it?
Policy and platform. That's we can look it up and read it. But he signed a 10-year agreement with the federal government rehousing 2 years ago. We're already into that, about building new units and fixing up into the low thousands of reparable houses and apartments for people to live in. Because it's an ecosystem.
What do you mean the low thousands? I'm sorry.
The number of units that are going to be fixed up. It also has to be done in concert with the city. Like the city, from reading council notes, and which is readily accessible, I know that one of the councillors said one of the main issues on her is bringing back a law so that you're able to build what used to be called rooming houses. So you have single room dwellings in a building, and so that they think that's a way to help with subsidized housing, so that it doesn't have to be a house or a 3-bedroom apartment, but it can be a rooming house in a modern sense. The other thing is that the city doesn't think that they have enough teeth to have developers make subsidized, they don't. They say, pretty please.
The city.
The city does not. So, as a provincial representative, I want to certainly explore that.
And what's missing in the city? Like, why don't they have enough teeth?
They don't, there's no law to make developers, let's say you're a developer,
Yeah.
and you are going to build X numbers of apartments. There are lots of codes you have to follow, etc. But there's not enough teeth to make you include subsidized housing.
So for poor people.
Yeah, there's other.
So the city can't do it.
The city can't do it themselves. That's what.
But what do they need?
They say it repeatedly.
They need the power to do it.
They need I think they need some laws changed, and it depends who you, of course the developers would have to be involved in that. Well, you're talking about a city with a vacancy rate of, what is it, 1%?
Yeah. But does the city need more, does the city also need more money, or it's basically like they need the power to do it?
I don't know about the money situation,
Okay.
but I think that they need help from the provincial government with how do we get subsidized housing in all its forms built into the system.
So you would want
and still have developers who will develop. I think you're going to, because we're not talking about a town with a 15% vacancy rate.
Yeah.
That would be really difficult. You know, we're talking about almost, this is another kind of difficulty. So I think having developers to do things here isn't that difficult. They're going to do it. There may be other ways to help them, like reducing fees that the city can do, reducing fees for, and I think they already do this in some occasions, but you know, all the permits that they have to buy, they can reduce those fees, take those fees away if they do certain things. But I read a number of times that they don't have the teeth to say, well, look, if you're going to put up a 30-unit building, we need this many subsidized housing units, because there's a huge list of people on that subsidized list around the province, and that's part of the Premier's platform and part of that 10-year signed agreement with the feds.
So when you're talking about like housing for more and more affordable housing, is that the idea of a quota within each building? There would be like, let's say there has to be like 10, 15, 20% within each building.
There'd be a number of different ways to do it.
Yeah. There's other ways, but that's kind of you could have perhaps like, I don't know, 1 building out of 5 or something, or
there's a number of different ways to do it, and I don't think I'm an expert enough in it to do it yet. But I've been a concerned citizen about it for quite a while, because I have been involved when I can with the homeless community. And as opposed to saying, well, this is not a solvable problem, I don't believe that.
Can I ask you another question? Since you're the candidate for the actually, I won't ask you that question. Sorry. Maybe some other time. I'd like you to talk about your art a little bit. More just to give an idea of the man behind the candidate.
Because we can't see it, right?
I know,
so
but like I can take some pictures, but like how can you start doing it?
Can you take pictures after?
Oh yeah, I will. I already did actually have the first part, but I'll go around.
It's kind of like talking about my music, say.
Oh, you play music?
No, but okay. I'm saying
yeah,
it's like if I'm reading a review about Taylor Swift and then I go and listen, I go, huh? You know, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So, of course, the art, you have to look at it. I've been doing art as part of my life for the last 40 years, and it's a very, very important part of my life. A lot of my work has to do with identity, and I do a lot of digital art. On my iPad, I illustrated 2 children's books for Sherry Fitch 2 years ago with watercolor and pencil on an iPad, and I do a lot of other things. But a lot of the sculptures and digital art has to do with identity, and the fact that if you are not encouraged or accepted for who you are, it has a huge detrimental effect on your life.
Interesting.
Megan's here from Global now.
Okay.
I'll let you get to your other obligations.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Thanks so much.
The time's done.
Thanks so much.
Yes, thanks
And
for your
take
time.
all the pictures you want.
Yeah, I will.